Good evening again, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sabrina Turner, and I have been asked by the government to be moderator for this evening's proceedings and all other 7 meetings that will be held throughout our islands over the next 3 weeks. It is my pleasure to be in this position, and before I go into some housekeeping, I will invite Mr. Councillor Austin Harris to make his way to the podium, and then I will go into protocol. Mr. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so very much for being in attendance this evening. It is a true honor to have all of you with us and certainly willing to learn more about this cruise port berthing and cargo facility project, which the government, in conjunction with the developers, are here tonight to lay out for your benefit. I certainly want to begin by thanking, first of all, the moderator, the organizers, the volunteers, those men and women wearing orange t-shirts representing the Prospect and Red Bay Community Group for their tireless service, not only to this meeting, but to every meeting we hold in Prospect and Red Bay. We have oodles and oodles of food for those of you who may have been stuck in traffic and haven't had a chance to have dinner yet. So you will, at the very least, not go home with empty bellies. But hopefully you'll go home with a lot more than just a full belly, but also a degree of confidence in the information that you receive from us this evening. As many of you know, prior to arriving in 2017, I stood against this project. But it is because of the information provided to me in the last 2.5 years by my colleagues in the government, those to my left and those in front of me, who have shared valuable information that has changed my viewpoint. And I now recognize the importance of this project, not only to the continuance in our cruise industry, but also what the new revenue that will be generated will mean for this country and its people. I want to add just a brief personal remark, particularly for my constituents in Prospect. I've heard some of the discussion in the last week, and as I said before, we can agree to disagree and still have a good conversation. But I've heard discussions in the last week that have gone so far as to suggest that those who feel strongly about the no position should be fearful that their representation from their MLAs and their various constituents will suffer as a result of their decision to vote no. I want to make something absolutely and abundantly clear. My job, and what I promised in 2017, was to represent you, whether you voted for me, whether you didn't, whether you support cruise berthing, whether you don't. It is your right to challenge and question, which is a right afforded to you in any democratic country. If tonight, obviously, I would like those of you who may be on the fence, not sure of a decision you wish to make, whether you want to support or not, I hope tonight's meeting and presentation will encourage you and satisfy your curiosities and any of your questions. Each of you have been given, I think, a piece of paper and a pen. If you have questions, ask them. Don't worry about the number of questions. Ask as many questions as you feel necessary to satisfy your minds as to what is real and what is myth. As we say on the magazine cover, truth matters. But if after hearing that truth, you still feel strongly enough that no is your position, then by all means, no is your position. It will not change the way either the Premier in Red Bay or myself in Prospect represent you. But I do hope that you will take as much away from this meeting as you can. I hope the information, which is comprehensive, will seek to satisfy your concerns. But again, above all, we thank you for being in attendance, and we hope that you will enjoy your evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. I will take this opportunity to introduce to you our panel that is at the head table. And I would say, Honorable Premier, Mr. Alden McLaughlin, Deputy Premier, Mr. Moses Kekernel, Mr. Michael Bailey. He is of Royal Caribbean, and then he is also representing Verdant Isle Port Partners. Protocol, we would also like to acknowledge in our presence this evening the Honorable Mr. Roy McTaggart, MLA, Minister for Finance, Economic Development, the Honorable Joseph Hugh, Minister for Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure, Councillor David White, Councillor for Tourism, Transport and Sports, Councillor Austin Harris, of course, who did our welcome, Councillor Ms. Barbara Connolly, MLA, Councillor for Education, and we'll also like to acknowledge Chief Officer Mr. Strand Bodden, Minister of Tourism, and Ms. Rosa Harris, Director of Tourism. From the Verdant Isle and technical team, Port Partners, all seated here in the front, who will be answering any questions throughout the evening, and we'll be giving them a mic. We would like to welcome Mr. Barry Luttermilk, Director of Business Development, and that's for the Orion Group, Mr. Scott Hicks, Coastal Engineer for Schneider Engineering, Dr. David Vaughan, President and CEO of Plant A Million Corals, T.J. O'Sullivan, Director of Compliance for Royal Caribbean, Mr. Peter Ranger, Chief Project Manager, Major Projects Office, Mr. Will Jacobs, Deputy Director for Port Authority Cayman Islands, and Mr. Chris Adnet, Technical Director for Royal Hoskins. Please pardon my pronunciation if I slaughtered that. As a matter of housekeeping this evening, we would like to encourage persons to respect and make sure that, so that we can get through a lot of the question and answers, you were given a pen, booklets, and bits of paper that will be distributed to you as you entered this evening. There will be persons walking around through this evening's proceedings to collect your questions. And the lady over here, Ms. Bev, is here for the reason to get through. We know that because there's not a room in mic, we know that some questions may be duplicated, and for full transparent, this is why Ms. Bev is here. She will read those questions and make sure to avoid duplications, that those are put aside. We intend to end this meeting as long as you allow, but we definitely want to end by 10. In the event that there are no questions that are not answered, we will direct you to our FAQ section on our website, as well on some social media platforms. Now, bathrooms are located to the front of the stage. Males are on my right, females are on my left. We ask you at this time to also silent or put your phones on vibrate to avoid any interruptions. Again, there will not be a room in mic. Should your question be posed on the floor at the question and answer section, and you have another question, we ask you to kindly raise your hand for maybe more bits of paper so that one of the persons on the floor will definitely take that. But we ask you please to be respectful, raise your hand, and someone will come and collect those papers from you. Without further ado, I would like to just go straight into the Honorable Premier, and I think it's most fitting to know that our Honorable Premier would like to express our public condolences to him on the loss of his father, and our thoughts and blessings and prayers are with him, his extended family and siblings. Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Sabrina. Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you all for turning out this evening. I want to thank so many of you as well for your kind condolences on the loss of my father. Truly appreciate it. I want to also welcome the listening public on Radio Cayman. This exercise is about trying to provide as much information as we possibly can about this controversial project. One of the great criticisms that the government has had to deal with and has had to fight with one hand tied behind her back until most recently was the fact that a lot of the information which was sought, and justifiably sought, was simply not available to us because of the structure of the project. This is a design, build, maintain, finance, or finance, maintain project. So much of the information that was initially sought was simply not available until a preferred bidder had been chosen, and that information was then available. Now, somewhat ironically, we are faced with the criticism that we ought not to have the Virgin Isle Port partners, those who are the preferred bidders for the project here at our meetings, because they are going to be, assuming the project goes through, they are going to be the contractors. But I've asked myself, and I ask rhetorically, who better placed to provide this key information that we all want than those who are actually involved in the project themselves? And so really that is what this evening is about, trying to provide as much information as we possibly can. I've said to many people, this whole debate has taken on, from quite a while now, a very ugly tone, and a very worrying one for me. Friday was 19 years since I've been elected, and I've been around politics before that. I know how these things go. But we have to remember, and we all should remember, that regardless of the outcome of the referendum process, we are all Caymanians or residents here who have strong feelings and love for this place. And we have to live together regardless of the outcome. The country will be stuck with the decision, whatever it is, but we all have to continue to make this place a viable, wonderful, beautiful place that we can continue to live in, raise our children, and go about our lives. Let's not forget that tonight. We can disagree without being disagreeable and disrespectful. When someone has a different view than you are, because they support the port, doesn't mean they hate Cayman or that they are drinking Alden's Kool-Aid or they are sheep or pigeons or some of the names I've heard supporters of the project called on various radio talk shows. So let's agree that we can disagree and feel passionately about our particular position without spewing hate and unkind things at people who have a different point of view. So let me tell you my point of view. When we planned the 2013 campaign for the elections, the Progressives team, most of us who had been around in one iteration or other of government over the many years, made it a point that a cruise berthing facility was a key plank of our platform to support the economy and tourism. We did win in the end. We won 9 seats outright, and one member joined us, so we had an outright majority in May of 2013. We moved ahead with the project. Through all of its earliest stages of research, we had to convince the United Kingdom government that it was viable. We had to agree to comply with a whole range of very strict regulations about how we went about the procurement process, and we did all of that. Fast forward to the 2017 elections, we ran again on a platform, this time with more detail, and this time talking also about the need for enhanced cargo port, because that had become apparent during the work we had done in the previous term, and we won 7 seats. The coalition government which we formed included a number of independents as well as the CDP. All but the member who just spoke, the member for Prospect, all of us campaign on a platform for the need for cruise berthing. So it is on the basis of that that we contend that we have a mandate to proceed with this project. Now, over the course of the past year plus, there has been a growing resistance to the project. Some of those who objected and object to the project have organized, and we now have CPR as the principal agency or organization who are opposed to the port. Now, many people I know have signed the petition which has resulted in a referendum on the basis that they truly, honestly, passionately believe the project is a bad one for Cayman. And I not for one moment wish to in any way disrespect or underplay their or talk down their particular position. I represent Red Bay. I know that there's a significant portion of my constituency that do not support the port. But I've lived in Prospect for almost 28 years. I know the district, I know the area, and I also know that there are many, many people who support what we are doing. The referendum has been triggered. The process is on the way. And in due course, the country will decide whether this project goes ahead or not. So the government respects that process. I do hope that everybody else will as well. And that over the course of the next few weeks, what we have on both sides is a proper campaign where people have the opportunity to learn as much as they possibly can about the key issues which make up, the components which make up this project. So there is the issue about viability of the project overall and the cost of financing. We're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to talk about the environment or environmental issues. We're going to talk about the basis for the project in the first place, that is, what triggers this need. And we have all of the key players here who are involved in the various aspects that make up the project. And I hope that we can take advantage of their expertise and their knowledge, and that those who are listening by radio and those who are here will leave better informed about the basis on which this project is proceeding. So I thank you all again for attending, and I look forward to a most productive meeting.
Thank you, Honourable Premier. I'll now invite to the podium the Honourable Moses Kirkernel, Deputy Premier.
Thank you very much, Sabrina. A very pleasant good evening to everyone. Thank you for coming out. Before I get started, I want to encourage everyone not to leave here tonight without one of these booklets. This is the first time that it's been available, and from start to finish, I think that it answers a lot of questions that we weren't able to answer before, and the information hadn't been put in a booklet that was very simple and easy to get at. I wanted to talk about the overarching responsibility of our government and how we have come to where we are today. When the Premier gave me the Ministry for Tourism, he gave it to me with a very clear mandate and responsibility. It's one of the pillars of our economy. It is one that had an opportunity to be driven forward, to show significant gains, and to provide major opportunities to the people of this country. We also understood clearly that the financial industry was a larger pillar, and we had to understand how we would complement them, how we would work with them, but at the same time, knowing that we could move the second pillar of our economy forward. So in doing that, we outlined what we understood was needed for us to compete in this region and globally. And if you look and think of what we've been able to accomplish, the first thing was that we wanted to make sure that we had the ability to make it easy for our tourists to arrive. We understood that we were behind on infrastructure. We understood that we needed to compete in a very competitive space in this region. So in a short order, in a short period of time, we moved forward for stayover visitors with the airport. And the airport was a challenge because it had to be built out of cash. And it was built under a business plan that allows it to continue to grow. In the last 2 weeks, you've heard about a $30 million expansion that lengthens its runway, improves the area for planes to park, and allows us to compete in even a bigger and better way. But it has shown us that business is 365 days out of the year. So when we want to provide opportunity for a tourism market and a tourism product, we need to provide it to where there's income throughout the year. That's what we attacked with stayover. And we attacked it by looking at the peaks and valleys of the market and making sure that when the peaks were there, the ROI on our advertising, our marketing, was not there for us. But the valleys themselves that we could raise up through different programs, we've had tremendous, tremendous success. This year we'll do over 500,000 tourism arrivals, up from 240,000 3 years ago. So that's the type of success we've had with our team and looking at how you manage your product. Now, I want to talk about our opportunity for cruise. And the first thing that we clearly have to understand is that we need improvement in cruise and in cargo. And they sit in the same place in Georgetown. When you see cargo ships at night, there's not enough space for the containers to be taken off. So what that means is that the containers have to sit there and the trucks can't move back and forth fast enough to discharge a vessel as quickly as it could if you have another 30,000 square feet at the cargo facility. It also means that in the morning, the people who work at the Port Authority have to clean the area and move everything to be ready for cruise passengers to come ashore. We can do better than that. And if we're going to compete in this space, we must do better than that because this is Cayman. So we looked at how would we be able to build a cruise berthing facility to push us into the future, and also find a revenue stream to build a cargo port at the same time. Knowing that we had just been through the business case of the airport and that we didn't have the ability to borrow money. That is how we started looking at expanding and taking advantage of a growing business in this region and providing opportunity. So the first thing we had to do was look at carrying capacity. And I'll say to you here tonight, carrying capacity is maxed out during the peak of our arrivals. So point blank, we don't want more arrivals in those peak times. That's not an opportunity for us. The opportunity for us is to understand how we manage the product and how we get people here 365 days out of the year. The exact same theory and the exact same way that we worked to build our stayover visitor is the same type of opportunity we need to provide for cruise passengers. So, number one, no more people here on specific peak days. The most that we get between 23,000 and 25,000 January, February peak days. Because of the way the design, build, finance, maintain model is, the people of the Cayman Islands manage and operate the port. So when we say at the Port Authority, the maximum amount of people that can come to Cayman on a daily basis is 25,000, which we've already had. That's who has the authority to say that. The Port Authority, which is owned by us, the people of the Cayman Islands. The second part of that is, don't let the numbers of 1.5, 1.9, 2.2 scare you, because if you did 10,000 visitors a day consistently, you would do 3.65 million passengers a year. But they would be spread out, and they would come when people need business. Now, I can tell you this time of year, coming out of the slow season, we have regular visitors that say, we need more business. We need the opportunity for more business. And it's very, very difficult, and it's very, very hard when you have months that you do 25% of the business that you did in peak season. So the opportunity is for us to build that and flatten out our seasons. And the way that we looked at doing that was talking to the cruise lines and saying, how do we encourage you to give us vessels, not just any vessel, but your highest spend vessels in our off-season? And they were very straightforward. They said, for us to do that, you need a cruise berthing facility. Chairman, Vice Chairman of Royal Caribbean, Mr. Adam Goldstein, has said over and over that they have never tendered an Oasis-class vessel, and they have no plans of doing so. But we need those type of vessels to come to Cayman in our slow season, and they pass us by in the slow season, along with Carnival, along with MSC, along with other vessels. So I just wanted to quickly touch on carrying capacity and make sure we protect our opportunity for business, and to make sure we understand that the goal of this initiative is not to put more stress on our environment or more stress on the precious land that we have undersea, or you wouldn't have the type of not only environmental impact assessments, but the global renowned experts that we have with us tonight as far as some of the things that they are going to be able to do for the economy. I'm hoping that that gives you an overarching understanding. We are happy to drill down into any of this, and we have plenty of public meetings, so I'm sure we'll be able to talk about a lot of these things more. Thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you, Deputy Premier. I'll invite to the podium right now Mr. Michael Bailey of Virgin Isle to give his presentation.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Michael Bailey. I'm the President and CEO of Royal Caribbean International and part of the Verdant Group, which I'll talk about in a moment. I'd like to thank the Premier and Deputy Premier for inviting us to participate in this dialogue and to be able to share details and information on the project with you today. The Port Partnership is, as you know, 4 groups, 4 companies: Royal Caribbean Cruises Limited, Carnival Corporation, Orion, and McAlpine. The 2 cruise companies basically are the 2 largest cruise lines in the world. We bring about 80% of all of the cruise tourists to Grand Cayman. McAlpine, I think you all know, it's a local company. It's involved in many projects here on the island and has been for many years. And Orion is a very well-known company focused on coastal construction and projects to do with the sea and ocean. So the project is expected to start construction in 2020 with a completion in 2022. There's a US dollar investment of $250 million. The project is to build 2 cruise piers and to increase the cargo facility capacity by 30%, upgrade the tender facility, and quite importantly, to upgrade the cruise arrivals area. And I'll talk a little bit more about each of these components as I go through the presentation. This gives you an overall image, a sense of how the project will look. You can see the expanded cargo area, the 2 piers, and the transportation hub. That gives you a sense of how the area will look for retail and part of the facility, the infrastructure that will be created for the cruise tourists. As already mentioned, there will be no financial risk to the Cayman Islands government. All of the risk of the project is borne by the 2 cruise companies. Just to give you some perspective, both Royal Caribbean and Carnival are currently engaged in probably over 120 projects around the world. We're building a $100 million terminal in Galveston. We've just finished multiple projects in Miami, in New York, across Asia and within Europe, and both companies have got decades of experience in these types of projects, so it's a familiar territory in terms of building port infrastructure in various destinations around the world. The financing, the cost of the project will be paid for by the head tax revenues that we, the cruise companies, will collect, and that will fund and finance the project and all of the costs associated with the project. The group will also be responsible for funding the maintenance of the cruise port for the 25-year period of the agreement, and also cover all insurance costs associated with protecting the risk associated with these piers in the event of hurricane, et cetera, et cetera. The beautiful thing about the project, and in many ways the Cayman Islands government should be commended, is that at the end of the 25-year life of this project, this asset will be fully owned by the people of Cayman and the Cayman Islands government. And so it's financed, the risk is borne by the cruise companies, the construction, the build, design, execution by the cruise companies, the maintenance, insurance by the cruise companies, collecting the head tax from the cruise guests by the cruise companies, and at the end of the 25 years, that asset becomes the property of Cayman, and the value of that asset in 25 years will be closer to $450 million. As the Premier or Deputy Premier mentioned, the control of the port remains completely with the people of the Cayman Islands and through the Port Authority of Cayman. The Port Authority determines which ships, when, how, what time arrive, depart, how many guests come into the port. It's all determined by the Port Authority. It's a very similar process in ports all around the world, where the Port Authority is the authority that manages the relationship with the external cargo and cruise companies. The control of the port obviously will continue of the cargo operations, all of customs, immigration, all of the cruise operations will be the Port Authority, and berthing fees will be negotiated and set with the Port Authority along with a number of ships, and the management of retail spaces will be managed by the Port Authority. Here's some more imagery that gives you a sense of how this space will look once we finish the project. We believe that this, based upon our experiences around the world, will be a nice space for our cruise tourists, enjoyable, be able to spend their money. This gives you a better sense of the cargo facility. And now I understand the video is working, so we're going to take a quick commercial break to show you the video. I don't have any popcorn, but if you were on a Royal Caribbean ship, the chairs would be a lot more comfortable, and we would have popcorn for you. This project really is about, in many ways, changing the model from an old model that's been in place for decades, ships coming to a destination. This project is about modernization and creating an adequate facility that allows the arrival of those tourists to come in an efficient way. Grand Cayman is a pretty efficient airport, and it manages efficiently through design and experience. All of the aircraft coming in, debarking, embarking, customs, immigration, all the procedures necessary, and it does it in an efficient way on a relatively small footprint. Today, in the arrival of the cruise ships, the ships arrive and they anchor in various locations around Georgetown. Tenders coming out to the ships, a long process to debark, and that's the process that we've got in place today for the cruise ship tourists. And that's approximately 1.8 million people. 600,000 air guests coming into a state-of-the-art airport, 1.8 million cruise tourists coming into fundamentally a model that was created 100 years ago. The group called Verdant is basically 4 companies: Royal Caribbean Cruises Limited, Carnival Corporation, Orion, and McAlpine. 2 cruise companies and 2 companies very much involved in construction and building, particularly in the coastal marine environment.
We believe the development of the cruise port facility will provide for additional economic impact opportunities for Grand Cayman, one by the additional spend we believe that guests and crew will have by being alongside compared to tender operations. And 2, more importantly, we believe the direct economic impact by having additional cruise arrivals to Grand Cayman will be significant. Having an enhanced welcome center arrivals, having berthing alongside are key components that we believe provide us the capability and the interest that we have in working with Grand Cayman.
Today, the larger ships can't go to Grand Cayman. It's just simply not possible to manage the volume of tourists that are on the large ships. So it's really the nature of that product attracts a much more affluent customer, and we think that very much aligns with Grand Cayman itself.
The project was the idea to upgrade both the cruise facility and the cargo berthing in Georgetown, Grand Cayman. So we've been working with them to come up with the best design that basically increases the size of the cargo pier capacity, which is vitally important to the needs of the Cayman Islands. On the cruise side, in building 2 finger piers that are 4 berth oasis capable, you are increasing the size of the ships that can come into Grand Cayman.
The consortium takes on entirely the risk of the project. We are designing it, building it, executing against this contract, and we're funding and financing it, and all of the funding and financing is the responsibility of the consortium. So there's effectively 0 risk, 0 responsibility to the government of Grand Cayman or the people of Grand Cayman.
You know, there's this whole conversation about it's going to cost people money. This is 100% financed by this consortium, and it's paid back through head tax collected by the cruise line.
I think we're all worried about the impact on the environment, and our intention is to replace 10 times the coral that we've removed to create the facility.
We brought in a specialized team that has worked in Grand Cayman named Polaris. They've done a lot of coral restoration, including in Grand Cayman. The Grand Cayman results are 89% success rate since they've started.
This is not a small project. It's going to take a number of months to move the corals. We have worked on several ship grounding cases here in Grand Cayman where we helped restore the reef. We feel like we're very qualified. We've worked on some really large projects, and we have skilled scientists, engineers, and frankly, artists, because it really involves all 3 of those aspects. It's not just a scientific endeavor. It's not an engineering endeavor. It's also an artistic endeavor. Our goal is to make a reef that looks like a reef, using all natural materials, with healthy corals that lay people and even scientists after a period of time could not tell the difference. On this case, we've done this before. We've thought to go small and move reef sections individually with small boats to stay out of the port's way, have a number of boats working side by side, moving that over to the donor area. And then when we start moving corals over, our aim is to be out of the 10-acre dredge footprint area in about 6 months.
For this project, we will be working on coral relocation as the part where we're taking out the direct impacts from where the dredging and the pier will be constructed. And then the other aspect, because we do know that there will be some loss due to coral relocation, we have decided to use this microfragmenting technique to increase overall coral cover within Grand Cayman, and we think that that will increase it by 10 times.
We're working with a group led by Dr. Vaughan, who's been at the forefront of advancing the coral microfragmenting planting technology.
Grand Cayman has got a beautiful natural resource, and they know they want to share that with the world. To do so, we have to be able to help make sure the natural resources has all the help we can, and that is with technology. We have the technology now to put to good use in natural resource restoration. That's what this is. And we can make something beautiful. We have that technology. It'd be a shame to not apply it. Some of the biggest questions people had is, can we do this at scale? And so we looked to start a project that was plant 1 million corals. Not only is it basically a good idea, it's our mission, it's our vision, and as I like to say sometimes, it's the recipe. Not only do we make many pieces, but each piece grows back to size in record time, which is very unusual.
Our goal is no net loss on this project. We've engaged Dr. Vaughan to bring his research and knowledge to Grand Cayman. There's a lot of coral. We understand the impact to that. But our responsibility is to move that coral and to supplement that program with adding Dr. Vaughan's coral restoration process through microfragmentation.
What's great about the microfragmentation technique and some of the other coral reskinning things that we do is we're able to see this actively happen before our very eyes. We can see it happen in a matter of months with each coral that we cut and plant.
I've seen some of the damage that anchors from 4 to 6 cruise ships do per day out there for years. There's a lot of severe anchor damage out there, and frankly, if that could be stopped in any way, that would be a positive.
That is a big negative with the current situation where the ships drop anchors and the chains drag and the anchors drag and they've destroyed acres of coral. There's a benefit there, particularly in the long term, because if you're not anchoring, then the coral has the opportunity to recover and regenerate over time. I mean, obviously it's not overnight. So there is a positive there with the project. The project brings a number of positives.
We'd like to work with the community down here in Grand Cayman. There's a lot of scientific expertise here. There's a lot of dive expertise here. We've worked with some of the members of the community in the past. We have relationships with them and are looking forward to doing that again. All the techniques are proven. The survival has happened, good survival. We've seen it right here in Grand Cayman. We can absolutely do it. It's just a matter of effort and a matter of doing it safely.
We look as an advantage of working for this project in the Cayman Islands is that there is a close partnership with the DOE and the government on making sure that this is a sustainable project. One of the first things we will do is get out and do what we're calling the coral gridding. We're basically just putting divers in the water, and we'll be really mapping out, almost pretty much by hand, all of the coral. The primary relocation area is approximately a little more than half a mile north of the project site. And there we'll be placing large boulders on the bottom as a foundation or a substrate for the corals to be attached to, so that we'll have new coral structures. Dredging the area of the port is not a contributor to the sand at 7 Mile Beach. 7 Mile Beach is what's known as a pocket beach, and essentially the sand there is somewhat self-contained. In the port itself, that area just is not a contributor of sediment to 7 Mile Beach.
There's a total commitment to make this a really great environmental success. We changed the way we're going to dredge the project, and initially we were looking at hydraulic dredging, but we changed the dredge process now to mechanical dredging, And we're going to have real-time sediment monitoring on the project.
It's important that the pier is on pilings and not a filled structure extending from shore to allow waves and currents to move through the structure as if it's not even there. Because it's on piles, the changes to the hydrodynamics should be relatively minimal.
We are undertaking everything we can within the framework of the port infrastructure and the guest and arrival welcome center. And we need to work very closely with the government of the Cayman Islands and the broader community to ensure that as these master plan enhancements for broader Grand Cayman and the road works and so forth are taken into account, and ensuring that we can continue to deliver that experience as the port arrivals may grow over time.
Our high season is the summer, from May through to October, and that's where we get higher paying customers and much higher yields. And it's extremely complementary with the Grand Cayman high season, which is in the winter. By allowing these ships to come into and berth in Grand Cayman, it effectively means that during the summer months, where today there's not a lot of tourists coming from the cruise ships, there will be more tourists coming from the cruise ships. Therefore, it's going to increase the number of tourists overall for the year, but on a daily basis, there will be no increase.
We believe that this provides a great enhancement to the arrivals experience for our guests and crew, and allows us to continue to count on Grand Cayman well into the future as we explore and bring additional new large ships to this market.
That really is the essence of this project, and that's why we're hopeful that the proposal to move ahead with the cruise pier is approved. Okay, thank you. This is kind of a complicated image to look at, but if you look at the red lines, you'll see where the original proposal had the project being built, the infrastructure. And subsequently, the team has worked to reduce the footprint of the project, and it has been now reduced by over 30% in terms of the amount of space that's taken up by the project itself. I'm not going to go into detail of explaining this. We can certainly talk about it later, but I think the important point is we've dramatically reduced the footprint, which was something that we were asked to do when we originally went through the proposals. We are very committed to environmentally responsible practices. We have a world-class team of scientists and coral experts. We're very focused on, as you've just seen in the video, the coral relocation and restoration. We have a robust silt management program in place, and our intention, if the project is approved, is to create an independent environmental oversight committee to help steer the project through to its completion. We have coral relocation and restoration experts. I think previously mentioned in the video, we are working with Polaris, Sea Ventures, Reef Tech, and of course Plant a Million Corals, which is headed up by Dr. Vaughan. These groups have been partners on large coral restoration projects for over 15 years, close to 15 years. They've successfully managed more than 70 different projects associated with coral reef restoration around the world in places like Mexico, Florida Keys, the Virgin Islands, Bahamas, etc. Here's just a quick example of some of these project results going back to 2006. And you can see from Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Grand Cayman, Mexico, that there's been a good success rate in terms of each of these projects. Dr. Vaughan, who is the leader of Plant a Million Corals, he's well known in the field of coral microfragmenting and caring for coral. He's a pioneer in this technology. We collectively, as part of this project, are intending on replacing 10 times the coral that may be displaced because of the project. So this is a project that will run for many, many years after the port infrastructure is completed. We will continue with this project, and our intention is to literally not only replace the coral, but regenerate coral at a significant rate. We also we plan on creating a one-of-a-kind nursery facility and exhibit for coral microfragmenting and coral restoration that will be available to not only the children here on the island, but the children of the cruise tourists that come ashore. And we will fund and build that facility, and it'll become part of an educational program that we will support during the life of the project, the 25-year life of the project. This is kind of an example where one piece becomes 9 pieces in 6 months. The second picture shows you 8 grown pieces attached to a cement base over a 6-month period. I think the picture on the right is really quite astounding. These are 8 pieces formed into a full coral head over a period of just under 2 years. And this apparently would have taken 25 to 75 years to create in the wild. So the technology is proven, is exciting, and I think is something that we're all very supportive of. This is a picture of one of the projects. This is Cancun Reef after a storm hurricane blew through, and you can see the damage that was created. And this was after several years of plantings, and you can see the regeneration that took place in this one specific area, which again I think is very exciting to see this working and to see the effect of this over time. For silt management, there have been concerns expressed about the excavation and what's going to occur with the silt. Again, we have experts in this field who have an extensive amount of experience around the world. There will be mechanical excavation, which is a much better way to control the silt. There'll be no offshore disposal. There will be real-time silt level monitoring and adaptive management to ensure that there is no turbidity. We also have a concern that was raised with regards to 7 Mile Beach and beach erosion. There was a study that was completed in 2015 with the EIA, and the Environmental Assessment Board did accept that the Georgetown project would have no impact on 7 Mile Beach, and that was a study completed some years ago. This, I think, is really a great image. A lot of people have a perception that the port infrastructure and the pier is literally like a road or a runway. It's a huge amount of cement that's placed in the ocean, in the sea, and that's simply not the case. You can see that when you remove the cap that rests about 10 feet above sea level, it's really a series of pillars, and this allows the free movement of water, sea life, etc., through this whole area without any meaningful impediment whatsoever. So I think that's something that's important to understand. The other positive about the project is the improvement with congestion associated with all of the transportation necessary to move the cruise tourists that are coming into the existing cruise port. And this facility will allow us to move all of the buses and the taxis off the streets into the cruise facility. We'll be able to stage them, park them, move them in a very efficient way where we can more efficiently load and move and transfer our guests through this facility in a significantly better way. And this removes all of the traffic from the streets. So that, of course, is again, another positive that we see from the project. The other consideration is with regards to the cargo facility. I think it was previously mentioned that the current facility has to really double up in terms of being used by the cruise guests for transportation, and also it's used extensively as a cargo facility. In 1977, when the cargo facility was first opened, the amount of tonnage that moved through that cargo facility was around 25,000 metric tons. This past year, 550,000 metric tons of cargo was moved through that very same facility. It is a very inefficient facility. If you talk to the cargo operators today, they're under a significant amount of stress. It's simply not an efficient process, and it has to double up for cruise guests at the same time. And so by expanding the cargo facility, it really does guarantee a much more efficient movement of cargo through the port, as well as separating cargo from cruise, which seems to be a very logical step forward. There will be employment opportunities, obviously, that will come with the project. This is a very extensive infrastructure project. It is going to take 2 weeks, two weeks, I wish. It's going to take 2 years to build. There will be, obviously, there's a local company who's overseeing the project. There will be significant employment opportunities associated with the construction of this infrastructure, and those construction jobs will last easily beyond 2 years, because this project obviously is a 2-year project. There'll be plenty of work that continues after that. More importantly, the increase in volume of tourists that will come to Cayman will guarantee a significant increase in the number of tourism jobs associated with the increase in tourists coming into the island. And there will be multiple entrepreneurial opportunities to create experiences for these guests and customers who are coming into Cayman. I think that it was previously mentioned, and it's really an important element of this project, which I think was a surprise actually to me in a conversation I had a couple of weeks ago when I was here. I was told with great certainty that the peak tourism business for the cruise business is in the winter. And when I told the person that that was actually completely incorrect, that our peak is the summer, it's not the winter, they were very surprised to learn that, because Cayman's peak is in the winter. The cruise tourism peak is all the way through the summer, from late April, early May, all the way through to October. That is really the peak for the cruise industry. And of course, that is remarkably complementary with the peak winter in Cayman. And currently, the bigger ships, certainly from Royal Caribbean, are not able to call into Cayman, and they operate all the way through the summer. All of our big, large Oasis-class ships that have significantly more affluent customers cannot call in Cayman. And they are all in the Caribbean all through the summer, with some of our most high-value, high-yielding guests in the entire industry. They just sail by Cayman. So the projection is that the volume of cruise tourists will grow from 1.9 million to 2.5 million. And again, as previously pointed out, I think the peak today is somewhere between 20 and 25,000 cruise tourists a day. That is the peak. That occurs during the winter. As you move through the summer months, there's plenty of days where that number is significantly lower. The intention is to bring more capacity in through the summer, and therefore there will be more days with volumes closer to that peak of 20, 25,000, but during the summer months, which we believe is a significant positive for the tourism economy here on the island, because you will be receiving many, many more customers during a low season period historically for you. And more interestingly, the customers that we will bring will be our most affluent customers on our larger Oasis-class ships. The visitor traffic flow will be significantly improved. Today, all of these cruise ships come into Georgetown. The ships have to position themselves. It's highly dependent upon perfect weather. If the weather condition is not perfect, which as we all know happens fairly frequently, if the sea condition is not perfect, if the wind condition isn't perfect, the ships can take longer to position themselves. They will not start tender operations when there is any kind of inclement weather. Many of these cruise ships, our cruise ships and our competitors' cruise ships, carry families with children. There's a lot of older guests, and it's not a particularly pleasant experience debarking these big ships on these tenders today. The guys who operate the tenders today do a remarkable job. I'm not criticizing those teams. They do a phenomenal job. But the fact of the matter is that these huge ships that are coming in today have families and older people. They have to climb down gangways. They have to climb onto these tenders. If the sea is moving in any possible way, the boats are moving, the ship is moving, it's not the most optimal process. And it can take hours to debark a cruise ship today, which again is not particularly efficient and is one of the key drivers of congestion in the cruise port today when all of these ships are trying to operate in the same time. This will allow us, literally like an airport, to manage the arrivals of the ship just as it is today in the airport. A plane arrives, it debarks, another plane arrives, etc. We will be able to operate in a very similar fashion with the cruise ships. A cruise ship comes in, it starts debarkation, the next cruise ship comes in, it starts debarkation. It'll even out the flow of gas through into the transportation hub, and we can move them out very quickly. So we think it's going to be a significantly improved and far more efficient process. It also gets people ashore into the experiences with more time, because today, as it takes a couple of hours to debark any one of these ships, it also takes a couple of hours to embark one of these ships. And I'm sure you've seen it on many occasions, long lines of cruise guests standing, waiting for their tenders to take them back to the ships. That's time, time is money, and those guests could be ashore spending their money with you. We think there'll be significant opportunity for the development of more tour destination experiences. We've seen this, of course, in other destinations around the world. It's an entrepreneurial opportunity. We know our guests today are seeking experiences. We've seen a fairly significant change in how our guests view their experiences and their travel and their vacation experiences. We know there's a shift in terms of how people are spending their money. They're moving away from buying TV sets. They're more interested in purchasing experiences. Our company is growing and continues to grow because we're very focused on delivering phenomenal vacation experiences to our guests, and the demand continues to increase. And it's amazing how much people are willing to pay for the right kind of experiences. So we think there's significant opportunity here to really deliver these types of experiences in a different way to our cruise tourists, which, by the way, generates significantly higher spend. And we see that in many destinations around the world. The other consideration is that the port project will be integrated into the Georgetown Master Plan, which we think would be another enhancement in terms of removing congestion and improving traffic flow in the Georgetown area. I mentioned this a couple of times. For Royal Caribbean, our larger Oasis-class ships, our newer, larger ships, have significantly more affluent guests sailing on them. Their affluence is around 20% higher. They literally spend a lot more money. And those guests and those customers today are sailing right past Grand Cayman. And the opportunity exists to bring those guests on Oasis-class ships into Cayman all the way through the summer. The economic impact today is estimated at around $240 million to the Cayman economy. After the project is finished, with the increase in number of cruise tourists coming to the island, our estimation is that will improve by $100 million a year, which of course is quite significant, and that'll all come into the economy. We certainly understand that after the referendum, whatever the decision may be, obviously we're hoping the decision is to move ahead with the project. As a consortium, we have invested millions of dollars into the project to date, and we've hired a lot of experts, and we put a lot of energy into creating what we think is a very viable, efficient, positive plan. But there's many steps that follow, and I think the point I'm trying to make is that we understand that the referendum is either a yes or no to proceed with the project. it's important to understand that the yes on the referendum, as we understand it, is the beginnings of a process. And that process is like any other process associated with a construction project. There is much work that has to be done, many permits and approvals, oversight that has to be received in terms of executing the project. But we're very ready to continue on that journey once we know what the decision is. We really think this is a win-win partnership. Both cruise companies have been coming to Cayman for over 50 years. We've been bringing our guests here. They've had a wonderful time. We genuinely think it's time to change the model, and we think it's an exciting opportunity, and we're very hopeful that this will pass. We're committed to environmentally responsible practices. Each cruise company has over 80,000 employees each with families and children. We're all concerned about the environment. We all want to make sure that any impact is completely minimalized, and we're very committed to make sure that that happens. It's positive from the perspective of employment. This will create more jobs on an ongoing basis in the tourism sector, and of course associated with the project itself. And there's many entrepreneurial opportunities that come with this. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation, and I think now we're going to open it up for questions and answers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey.
I've been at the port from 1995. All these vessels keep on getting bigger. We are having more and more actually containers coming in. If you look at the figures from back in 2010, we actually had about 22,000 TEUs coming in. And at the end of actually 2018, we were up at actually 30,000. So this is a fairly large increase in only 8 years. So if we continue with that same actually trend, another 8 years, we're going to be 35–37% more, and we just do not have that space as it is now for us to keep on doing this. We cannot move all the containers that come in off of a vessel from the dock up to the cargo center within a single night. All of the actually increased volume, it is just not making it possible anymore.
I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the presence of Honorable Dwayne Seymour, MLA Minister for Health, Environment, Culture, and Housing. Now that you've seen the presentation and the cruise port, we will open it up to the questions which I have. And for those who may have joined us after the housekeeping, just to repeat that there will not be a roaming mic. We would like for persons who, once you were entered, you may have been given a booklet along with a flyer and a sheet of paper. We'd like you to ask your questions on those papers for filtering process so that we can get as much as these questions answered and posed tonight. We have Ms. Bev to my right who will be sorting them so that we don't duplicate. Some of the questions, your answers may have been answered based on those videos and the presentations already, but you know what? For transparent, we have to read them. So we ask you to please be respectful, be kind, so that we can get through as much of these questions as possible. I will go straight into the questions, which is in no particular order. Michael, from a cruise line perspective, what will happen if we do not build the pier? Will the big ships come to Cayman as reported?
The big ships, the order book for ships today, around 40-something% of all of the ships being constructed for the future in the cruise industry are basically these super large ships like Oasis class. We can't bring Oasis class to Cayman today, and they're the ships with the more affluent customers on them. We have 3 more Oasis class ships that will be constructed, and we have a new class of ship called Icon class, which will be a very large ship as well. None of those ships can come to Cayman. So I think what will happen is there will be no forward momentum. You know, other destinations will be moving forward and developing infrastructure and destination experiences and receiving these more affluent customers, and that's a choice that they've made. If the decision is not to proceed, then basically there will be no growth. And we certainly won't be able to bring these larger ships in the summer, which I think is a huge opportunity for Cayman. It doesn't add to the volume or congestion, it simply brings very affluent customers who are interested in coming here in your low season and our high season. And I think that's the opportunity that's going to be missed.
Okay. How many jobs will be lost by not tendering?
We did have we had a meeting with the guys who operate the tenders. Tendering will continue, so it won't be completely eliminated. It will continue. We had a discussion with them, obviously pending what the outcome of the referendum is. Both cruise companies have many other destinations around the world that do require tenders for our smaller ships and small volume destinations. And there's also opportunities to convert their existing business into other types of tourist activities associated with the tender boats that they have, and also the maritime staff that work with them. So we'd work with the tender company to try to have, you know, what we would call a soft landing, to make sure that anyone's jobs with that company were as best as possible protected, and we'd work with them to move them into other roles and jobs in associated parts of the business.
Thank you. To Verdant Isle. Could you enlighten us to how Verdant Isle fits into the Cayman port conversation at this stage? Could you enlighten us to how Verdant Isle fits into the Cayman port conversation at this stage?
Well, we're a consortium. It's Carnival, Royal Caribbean, Orion, and McAlpine. 4 companies have come together. We were part of a bidding process. There was a tender put out by the government, and multiple groups stepped forward and proposed the project. And this group was the group that was awarded was the preferred bidder, and that's kind of our role in this. And we're of course just now waiting to hopefully get a green light, or not.
Now, once the questions are asked, there may be some experts in the front, or even our officials here that may want to weigh in on the response. So I will not necessarily point anyone out. I will just pose the question, and those persons who are equipped and able to answer it, I'll just pass you the mic if you're in the front, okay? Will the ships remain in port longer than 2 p.m.? Will the ships remain in port longer than 2 p.m.?
Yes. You know, being able to have a ship alongside allows us to stay longer. I mean, one of the things that people become more anxious, just our tourists, our guests become more anxious when they've got to go through a tender operation. They tend to come back to the ships earlier, and they just want to come back to the ships earlier. If your ship is tied up alongside, in many ports we go to, we stay until 10 o'clock at night, we stay overnight. Of course, it's dependent upon the attractions and activities that we can offer. If there's something great happening downtown and we know about it, we'll keep our ships here until 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. And that's pretty normal in many destinations and ports around the world. I mean, our job as cruise companies, our entire focus is delivering great vacations. We put a huge amount of energy into making our guests super happy, and that's why they come and sail with us time and time again. We can only do that if we deliver a great vacation. And a great vacation is a huge component of a great vacation is a great destination. And they rank all of these destination experiences, and when they have a great experience ashore, they want to keep coming back, and we'll stay longer.
What guarantee do we have that Verdant Isle, with your track record, that anything you say to us about our proposed port project is reliable?
Oh, that's a little unfair. Well, so, well, both Royal Caribbean and Carnival Corporation have both public companies. They both trade on the New York Stock Exchange. We've both been in business for over 50 years. We are reputable corporations that are very well funded and financed. Both companies are leaders in the space, and we have engaged in projects all over planet Earth in all kinds of different circumstances, and I would say that 99.9% of those projects have always been delivered in the right way.
On those days when less than 4 cruise ships are in port, how will it be decided which 4 will disembark via berthing and which will be tendered? Would Carnival and Royal Caribbean have priority over other lines, example, MSC? On those days when less than 4 cruise ships are in port, how will it be decided which 4 will be disembarked via berthing and which will be tendered? Will Carnival and Royal Caribbean have priority over other lines? Example, MSC.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. You can all hear me? Okay. So what the government has already agreed with 4 of the 5 major lines, being Royal Caribbean, Cruise Line, Carnival Corporation, MSC, and Disney, is actual preferred preferential berthing slots. So there's 2 pairs, 4 berths, 7 days a week, and 4 7s is 28, and we've actually allotted those slots to those 4 cruise lines. So there's not going to be a question on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, who already has a slot.
I hope that answers the question. What is the anticipated increase in taxi licenses? What is the anticipated increase in taxi licenses?
We've tried to monitor the taxi and tour operators based on the growth of the industry itself. And if you look back over the number of years, you will see that in a systematic way, the increase in both tour operators and taxi operators has been along the lines of the growth in stayover and the growth in cruise passenger. So if you have 20% growth, you look at what number of taxis and tours is needed, and then you also look at the time when they're needed.
In light of a successful petition process, example, 25% of the electorate, as well as the confirmed verification process, plus the overriding negative views being expressed on social media, why do you believe so many Caymanians do not share your enthusiasm and support for the proposed cruise berthing facility?
I'll take that one. I don't know that is the case, but what I do know is there is a referendum date set for the 19th of December when all the mystery will disappear and we'll know for sure who supported it and who didn't.
Can the government guarantee that cruise liners will not be allowed to offload their own bicycles, electric bikes, and other vehicles, buses, vessels for mass transportation, which may threaten the livelihood of Caymanians offering bicycles, Segway tours, other vehicle tours, and that of taxi drivers?
The simple answer to that is that the government has laws in place of what can be brought in, what can be taken out, what the duties are. But I want to make it clear that there are times when the government also has to action enforcement to make sure things aren't brought in, and it's reviewed by government on a daily basis.
What does Cayman look like if we don't build the piers and cargo port?
Well, let me start with cargo. If you don't increase the capability of bringing cargo into Cayman and into the Cayman Islands, because we hub the sister islands out of Georgetown, you're going to find an increased cost of living because it's going to be more expensive. It has been explained that we don't have the area now to actually store the containers, the TEUs, as they come off, which means you can't do it efficiently. So when you can't do something efficiently, it starts costing you more and more money. If you look on a daily basis in the harbor itself, you'll see some of the tugs that bring in the barges and some of the ships that bring in aggregate have to go back into the stream, wait there, come into demurrage, cost more money, and obviously they're going to charge more money, and that means the goods go up. The other part of it is that the revenue stream from the cruise arrivals goes toward paying for the cargo facility. And that is an identified revenue stream that is not incumbent upon any government funds right now to be used to fund that. So if cargo was to be done without a revenue stream from cruise arrivals, the government has to find the money. The government would have to take the money from education, it would have to take the money from health, it'd have to take the money from social service, it'd have to take the money from infrastructure, and Cayman would be a different place for that reason. The idea of tourism being one pillar of our economy is huge to keep Cayman the way it is today. If you don't strengthen your product, if you don't grow your business, you don't give opportunity to the next generation, you don't provide them the skill sets they need to be successful, and you don't allow your country to grow.
I'll just remind each of you, because we have a number of questions to get through, that those of you who've been here very early, there are refreshments to the back of the room. On to our next question. As per the Cayman Islands Government 2018 Public Finance Report, 5,000 students were given free education, 14 million given college scholarships. Cayman has had the lowest unemployment over a decade. Import duty waiver on electric cars, all achieved without cruise berthing. How are we going to make up for the shortfall when cruise shippers stop paying us for 25 years? And how is this going to affect our standard of living? How are we going to make up for the shortfall when cruise shippers stop paying us for 25 years? And how is that going to affect our standard of living?
I think it's a mathematical equation is what's being driven at. We do 1.8 million cruise passengers now. Part of the financial arrangement is that the government would receive $2 less from the passenger tax, because that would be used to pay for the cruise berthing facility. But if you do the math on it and you grow the business to 2.5 million, you'll realize that you're actually collecting more money than you are now. And the choice is, you're not going to grow your business without a cruise berthing facility. So if you want to increase your revenue, have the money available for social services, health, education, and infrastructure, you have to improve the product that you have. Anybody that's in business in this room looks at where your revenue comes from. You sit down in your meetings and you say, how do we grow revenue? The way the country grows revenue is by providing the ability for the tourism product itself to grow.
How will the Spots Jetty be used? 1, during construction. 2, when project is completed. How will the Spots Jetty be used? 1, during construction. 2, when project is completed.
The Spots Jetty will continue to serve as an alternate when the weather from the north doesn't allow you to come into Georgetown to berth.
Ain't Verdant Isle supposed to be neutral? Question. Ain't Verdant Isle supposed to be neutral?
Actually, no. Verdant Isle has been chosen by the Government Procurement Committee as the preferred bidder. As I explained at the start, this is a design, build, finance, maintain project. Until we chose a preferred bidder, we were unable to answer most of these questions because they were contingent, answers were contingent upon us having a design, having proper costings, the full range of issues. So now that we are in a position where we have a preferred bidder, I think we should welcome the fact that we have those who are invested, in every sense of that word, in the project, able to be held accountable and to answer whatever questions there are.
Will the construction of the cruise port affect the West Bay Beach?
Yeah. Scott, can you?
It's on.
Thanks.
It's yeah. Introduce yourself, please.
My name is Scott Hicks. I'm with Schneider Engineering. I'm a coastal engineer. Schneider Engineering is leading the marine design components for the project. The question is regarding West Bay Beach, 7 Mile Beach, and will the construction affect 7 Mile Beach and West Bay Beach? This is addressed a bit in the presentation. Essentially, the answer is no. The dredging at the port, the 7 Mile Beach is a pocket beach, and so the sediment on 7 Mile Beach is relatively contained within the headlands on both the north and south side of the beach, and there's no real sediment connection between the area of the port and 7 Mile Beach. What happens is sand comes from the east end of the island. The predominant wind direction is generally from the east, and the sand moves along both the north and south ends of the island. And when it gets to the west end, on the north side, it generally tends to go offshore with a little bit of sneaking around during northwester events. So that provides a little bit of sand source, but not much. On the south side of the island, the sand gets pushed along the south side and then ends up at the southwest corner out offshore and does not make that corner around and does not transit up the west side of the island towards 7 Mile Beach. And that's based on the 2015 EIA analysis and has been backed up by other studies as well.
And for the sake of the audience, when some of these answers are actually given, there are slides here, and a lot of this information is also provided in the book for you to actually take with you. Yeah.
I guess I just talked right through that.
It's relatable. What guarantee we have that the coral reefs would not be damaged, and are we willing to trade off the natural resources and millions of revenue diving has brought to these islands for a dock? What guarantee we have that the coral reefs will not be damaged?
Dr. Vaughan, could you answer that, please?
Well, there's no guarantee that there won't be any coral damage. We are damaging corals right now by allowing these large vessels to be anchoring just offshore. We've got to stop forcing large vessels to be dropping anchors in the second reef out. We really need to have a fixed reef, like in many other places where these vessels can tie up. We need to allow that reef to actually regrow. And there will be a displacement of the inshore reef that's in the area of dredging, as well as the area of the expansion of the port and the cruise dock itself. That has been modified so it is less than what the 2015 report was forecasting. The donor site will be moved to a relocation site, as you see in the picture, of just about a kilometer away, the middle one. So this will be the site of the donor. It's about 10 acres that have corals. About half of that is some very nice looking spur and grue area, and about a little less than 5 is what we call a hard bottom with occasional corals. They will be, through the coral translocation process, moved to over here with Poseidon, who did work here and came on and got a good 86% survival. There's another secondary relocation site here, but if the referendum goes, we will actually be looking at a couple of the sites to recommend possibly in the areas that they no longer will be anchoring at as an area for also being able to restore. Coral restoration will be done on top of the requirement and the suggestion of coral translocation. So the original one was basically to relocate corals. It was added onto that with this new technology that we now can do with some of the massive corals of actually restoring and growing more each year for the next 25 years. So in addition, there will be more corals put out in the areas, maybe not only in this location, but wherever in the next 25 years the Department of the Environment decides are good locations. So the bottom line is that there are some corals that are going to be impacted. The wonderful thing is that this group has looked to minimize that impact to the most possible. Everything has an impact. By me standing here and exhaling, I'm giving out some carbon dioxide, and mankind will be impacting corals around the world from my exhale. I actually was surprised on how many vehicles it took to get here today to this meeting, and each of those vehicles are putting some sort of carbon impact out there as well. So everything on this planet has an impact. You have to decide on your referendum, do you want to try and take one area and stop the damage of offshore anchors and lessen it and maybe move corals in a relocation study and also do a restoration study that will last many years.
In the event of a major storm or Cat 5 hurricane, will the concrete pilings hold and not uproot and wash ashore and causing major destruction to life and buildings?
Hello, everybody. My name is Barry Loudermilk with Orion Marine Group. So through all the engineering and the studies that we're doing, the pile capacity will be further reviewed once we start doing the geotechnical data. When we go out and actually do the geotech, when we take the locations of the piers and we actually drill down and we understand what the rock structure is. So a lot of the engineering that these fine guys at Snyder do is the upload or the uplift capacity of the piers. So currently these piers are designed for Cat 5 rating. So hopefully that answers your question.
Why is Cayman pursuing this direction now when so many other destinations are doing the opposite? Example, capping or reducing cruise tourism. Why is Cayman pursuing this direction now when so many other destinations are doing the opposite, i.e., capping or reducing cruise tourism?
I think if you look at the growth of cruise tourism, it's continuing, and there are many, many destinations around the world that are engaged in thoughtful master planning that is allowing that growth to continue. There are a small number of destinations, for example, a classic would be Venice, that is caught in a long debate about tourism. Not only cruise tourism, but air tourism and tourism overall. It's not just focused on cruise. This is an issue that many destinations around the world are wrestling with. Venice is a classic example. How do you manage the volume of tourists coming into basically a medieval village? And it's an ongoing debate. And we see that frequently. I mean, when we're engaged in these discussions with different communities and destinations, we're talking about thoughtful master planning and designing for the future. I think I mentioned in a previous meeting we had here that we just finished a significant investment in the Bahamas, where next year we will take 2.4 million cruise tourists to that destination every single day. We have ships calling at that destination. We'll take 2.4 million tourists to that destination, and we're only utilizing 50 acres of land. And it is currently rated the #1 destination globally for Royal Caribbean out of over 300 destinations. So this is about planning and designing for the future and figuring out how to accommodate the inevitable growth that is coming with tourism. It's not just cruise tourism, it's tourism. And by the way, Chinese outbound tourism, which is not really impacting the Caribbean in any material way at the moment, is probably coming. And today that is the largest outbound travel market on the planet, and it is growing at an incredible rate. So tourism, is part of all of our lives. And I think it's not going away. The question is, how do communities plan and prepare to manage tourism in the most efficient, effective, productive way so that it creates a win-win outcome, not only for the tourist, but for the community as well?
I think
just to follow up on that, I think we've looked at it as a government as an opportunity to grow the business itself in a way that is conducive for the country, balancing between the environment, balancing between the jobs, balancing into the next generation. So number one, you want the highest spending passenger, which Michael Bailey has explained tonight comes on their vessels during the summer with the highest yield. You wanted to not put any more pressure on the attractions and the island itself as you have it here, so you don't allow any more people. You have a max number that we control ourselves that you're setting down, and then you push to flatten out the seasonality of it, that everybody that's in the industry knows they're going to have an income 12 months out of the year. So that's what the government has tried to do to manage the opportunity and take advantage of what is available here. If you were in Colorado, you would look at skiing. You know, we're in the Caribbean. This is an opportunity for tourism and balancing our tourism between stayover and cruise.
If I might just add, I have listened to the discussions about this for a long time now, and there is an unfortunate tendency to believe, for some people to believe, that we can do without cruise tourism. The reality of the Cayman construct is this: the vast majority of the 4,500 plus people involved in the cruise industry are Caymanian. Stayover tourism, the number is way down. Maybe 30–40% are actually Caymanians who are doing the jobs. We have tried, my government, the two that I've led, and those before me, to persuade Caymanians that they should see stayover tourism, the hospitality industry, as a viable occupation. I think we're making some strides, but we're a long way from getting the kind of Caymanian take-up that we want. I've also been around as a representative long enough to have lived through 2 cycles when cruise visitors fell down around 1.3 million and was faced with delegation after delegation of tour operators, taxi drivers, and others screaming because they couldn't pay their mortgages, they can't pay for their vehicles because they're simply not earning enough. It took us from 2000, we were at 1.8 million in 2003 before Hurricane Ivan struck. And it's taken us almost all those years to get back to 1.8 million, which is where we're at now. Now, every place has a carrying capacity. None of us are suggesting that we can go on growing this exponentially, given the finite size of Cayman and the resources that we have and the attractions we have. What we are saying is, if we have the cruise berthing facilities in place, we can avoid these maximum peaks of 25,000 people when the island is creaking because it's under so much strain, and have the 2.2 or 2.3 million people, visitors, spread across every month of the year, so that the numbers at any given time are significantly below the carrying capacity. That's what we're trying to do.
Premier, don't turn off your mic. This is a follow-up question. Can the Premier clarify or correct his statement that we will know who supported it and who didn't, bracket, after referendum?
I mean, we'll know whether it was the yes group that supported it or the no group.
For one reason, okay, hold on. I'm trying to decipher the writing here. If for any reason things go bad with the contract before the job is completed, who will be responsible for the expenses? Or who will be stuck with the expenses?
Well, the lawyer in me would say that that would be the one that is in breach of contract. So if it's gone wrong because the Cayman Islands government didn't do what they were supposed to do or did something they weren't supposed to do, then the government would have to pay out damages. If the contractor failed to deliver, then the contractor is liable.
How will the berthing benefit our own men and women and citizens of this island? Senior citizens, sorry.
Well, I think those who listened to my presentation on the budget on Friday and listened to the budget address delivered by the Honorable Minister of Finance would appreciate the concern that this government has in ensuring that the older persons in this community are able to benefit from Cayman's overall prosperity. And I'm sure people would not welcome me rehearsing all that I said on Friday, but we did announce the introduction of significant new measures to make life more affordable, more comfortable for the seniors among us. An increase in the overall revenue of the Cayman Islands government gives us that ability and will continue to give us the ability to look after the most vulnerable in our community. That's what this is about.
Will there be employment for Caymanians to work on board any of these ships, such as when our Caymanians went to sea with the national bulk carriers on any of the ships? Will there be any job opportunities?
We, for Royal Caribbean, every single year we're bringing new ships into our company. And our bigger ships, we have around 2,500 employees on each ship. We're hiring around 10,000 new employees a year for Royal Caribbean. I would imagine at Carnival it's a bigger number. We're constantly seeking people to work on our ships. And interestingly, we offer huge career opportunities. And I can actually say that about myself because 38 years ago, I started working with Royal Caribbean as a kid in an entry-level position on board a Royal Caribbean ship. And over the 38 years, I've now become the president and CEO of this company. And we hire huge numbers of young people from around the Caribbean and around the world to work with us. We would be delighted to present opportunities to people in Cayman to come and work on Royal Caribbean. More than happy to do that. And I think more recently we've started to schedule recruitment fairs, I believe, to do just that. And by the way, I would encourage, especially youngsters, once they've reached 21 plus, it's truly a great opportunity, and they get to see the world. It's an amazing opportunity.
Question as it reads, why do they need to remove the Balboa and the Cali? Why do they need to remove the Balboa and the Cali?
The Balboa sits in the sort of the center of our current dredge pocket. The Cali does not. The Cali sits to the north edge of the existing tender pier and what are a proposed edge of the tender pier. So we're not planning on moving the Cali. I know I've talked to some folks before the meeting about some issues they had, and I want to expand on those issues with you guys and talk about it with our engineers. But the Balboa, we will move it. We're going to team with an archaeology company that's going to come in and map that ship, and we're going to move those piece by piece, an exact replication of what's there today.
Just to add on that too, with the Balboa, the hope is right now it's in a very inaccessible location right outside the port and not a safe dive area, at least during the day. And it's hoped that when we relocate it to the relocation area just up to the north, that it'll be more accessible for dives, and that people will be able to get out there and see it more than they can now.
How will the government manage the extra overflow of traffic congestion in the Georgetown area along with the 7 Mile beach?
Well, we have the infrastructure minister here, and I'm tempted to ask him to take this question. But if more detail is required, I'll have to ask him to weigh in. But more broadly, we have been working for now six years on the Georgetown revitalization plan or project. A big component of that has been the design and construction of a number of new thoroughfares in and around the perimeter of Georgetown City, if I may call it that. And there is more of that kind of work planned and on the way. We've had to sort of shift some focus now to try to deal with the situation with the traffic to windward. And that really is where we're focusing. But we are very, very conscious that we have to be able to move those who come ashore as cruise visitors quickly and efficiently around. Otherwise, we defeat the overall exercise. So none of this is being done in isolation. There is a lot of thought and work going on. This project, assuming it gets the go-ahead in December, would probably not begin before the summer in any event. And so we're looking at a two and a half year construction period. So we do have that window to ensure that we get the road network up to scratch to be able to deal with the expected increase in visitors. The minister is anxious. I must have said something wrong.
Thank you. Good evening. Not a bad effort, Premier. The effort, there's two things, or a few things. From the initial get-go with the Baird report, a traffic study was done and they worked along with the NRA from then. But one of the key features of the enhanced facility is that we take, it was mentioned earlier, is that we take all of that traffic congestion that's on Harbor Drive at the moment that's creating the slowdown entering into town, and we move that into the gates. And so you don't have all of the taxis and buses dropping off on Harbor Drive, queuing up on Harbor Drive, persons soliciting business on Harbor Drive. We move that all inside the port, which will allow free access. And the Premier touched on all of the different road networks that we're creating. But even further than that, certainly the ministry and myself, our views are in this government is that we need to look at traffic as a matter of moving people and not how do we reduce the time spent in your car. So moving people means that through the Georgetown revitalization and with the upcoming traffic study that the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport and Commerce and Planning are doing, is we're looking at things like hop-on, hop-off services around Georgetown and along the West Bay Road, so that we start mass public transportation, making it easier for people to move from A to B without having to get in their own cars. And we hope that both locals and our cruise passengers or visitors will take advantage of these sorts of opportunities.
Should we become like other destinations in the region, can't we come up with other tourism ideas to generate revenue? Should we become like every other destination in the region, can't we come up with other tourism ideas to generate revenue?
I think in the core structure of a tourism product, you have to have the driver. And the driver, in our case, is stayover and cruise. What is incumbent upon us is to take advantage of once you attract the people here to spend the money. I mean, I hate to say it in this way, but things go forward because you have funding for them to go forward. And you have a responsibility to attract income, and then that income flows into opportunity of different attractions, opportunity for different businesses, and from a government standpoint, it gives you opportunity because you have revenue streams that helps the community, helps the people.
What jobs will government assist those persons with who will no longer tender the cruise visitors?
I think Michael Bailey said a couple things in his presentation and answering some questions. Number one was that he had met with the owners, the people that work on the tenders, and looked at, as he said, a soft landing or an exit strategy. The other thing is this country has 3% unemployment. The tender operators are extremely qualified, efficient people who have an honorable income and an honorable job. I think the opportunity there, if they choose not to stay in the tender business itself, is for them to look at other types of jobs because they have skill sets that will allow them to do a lot of other things.
I'm trying to get those questions that came in at first and also trying to read while we're answering, so I'm not sorting them. I'm just trying to answer all the questions that came in so we cover as much ground as possible. Why is the cruise companies requiring Cayman to build a cruise berthing facility?
The cruise companies are not requiring Cayman to build a cruise berthing facility. This is a partnership of opportunity. We as a government, as Premier has said, for a long period of time, have looked at how we can take advantage of our tourism product and how we take advantage of revenue streams. I will say this to you, that a cruise berthing facility is similar to an airport. I had heard for 20 years that we needed a new airport built. The new airport's built. I've heard for 20 years that we need cruise berthing for Cayman to continue to move forward and create opportunity. This is our opportunity. We are doing everything that we possibly can to make it a success story in a partnership with best in class.
Will the public be able to enter the port and enjoy those shops and facilities, or will we be blocked out like we are now? Will the public be able to enter the port and enjoy those shops and facilities, or will we be blocked out like we are now?
Thank you for the question. So the security arrangements that are in place now will remain once the facility is built, if it is built.
Will there be a new independent environmental impact study carried out before the project is executed? Please introduce yourself. It's your first time speaking.
Hello, Chris Adnett from Royal Haskoning DHV. We've been doing some environmental work for the Cayman Islands government. So at the moment, the consortium are undertaking a scoping study which is looking at whether there are any significant differences in the impacts that were assessed in the original environmental statement with the new design. So that's ongoing at the moment, and the results of that will be available or will be reviewed in terms of whether an environmental assessment update is required.
Why is anyone from our own DOE not present to discuss the environment impact of this project and our national conservation law?
Hi there, Peter Ranger, Chief Project Manager at the Public Works. The reason DOE aren't here is because, as Chris said, we're currently going through a process of an environmental scoping update that will be submitted to DOE. They'll take that on board and then report. So it's really inappropriate for him to be here now until we actually get that scoping study. Okay?
If you use silt monitoring stoppage as a mitigation, is there a ceiling on the cost of stoppage? And, follow up to that, how much has been included in the projected cost for this? If you use silt monitoring stoppage as a mitigation, is there a ceiling on the cost of stoppage? How much has been included in the projected cost for this?
So during our bidding process, we worked a lot on looking at the dredging program. And we understand, as Orion, much like most of our consortium members, we're a public company, and one of the things that we do a lot is we do dredging, as well as we do port infrastructure work. So when we looked at this and we understand the environment, have worked in the Caribbean and numerous islands, we know there's going to be stoppage, and we know how to work along that stoppage. So when monitors are triggered and it says, hey, you need to stop, or you're reaching levels that could be harmful, we have an opinion based on what the situation is, whether we stop or we move. So we can move to another area and work while that area that has been triggered settles down. So hopefully that answers your question. There's no ceiling. If you tell me that we have to stop for a year, then we don't know, we didn't understand how we bid the job. But this is what we do every day, and we're very confident in what we do.
How can we be sure we are getting best bang for buck? 200 mil seems exaggerated based on what is being proposed. How did Verlin Isle arrive at that figure? Why 25 years?
Easy answer to that question, we've done a tender. Yeah, we had 11 companies who bid for the project, 9 pre-qualified. It went 4 to 5 and 3, then down to Verdun Isle. So how do you know you got the best price if you're going to build a house? You go out to tender. That's what the government spent 2 years doing. So in the short answer, the tender process.
And for the sake, I have about 14 pieces of paper here, plus I think Bev has over 21. If for some reason we don't get through all of this tonight, we assure you these questions will be posted on our F&Q section on our website and also on some social media with the respective responses. Another question, will the government be undertaking any air quality studies prior to, during, and after construction of the berthing facility? Air quality testing prior to, during, and after construction of the berthing facility. There's 2 other questions, I don't know. I just throw them out there and then you guys respond accordingly so we'll know where to take it from. The other one, will vessels keep their engines running during the debark process? Why do we keep saying that there is zero cost to the government and the people of the Cayman Islands for 25 years? Cayman Islands government will receive at least 2.32 less per passenger, zero cost. Lie. So this is 3. You want to go to the one with the air quality? I'll pose that again. Yeah. Will the government be undertaking any air quality studies prior to, during, and after construction of the berthing facility?
So air quality was one of the issues that was looked at in the original environmental statement. And this was looked at in the original environmental statement. So that will be being looked at again in the scoping study to look at whether further work is still needed on that aspect. So that will come out in the scoping study that's being undertaken at the moment.
I'll take the second question. My name is TJ from Royal Caribbean. The question was, will ships still be utilizing their engines during, when they're at pier? When you're at pier, our ships, Royal Caribbean, only run one engine. That's to keep the lights on. When we're doing dynamic positioning or out at anchor, it's 2 engines. So there is a improvement in air quality release from the carbon emissions for the vessels when it's at pier versus tender. 2 other points I wanted to address. I also work in shore excursions for Royal Caribbean, so I'm going to address some questions. The Deputy Premier touched on something somebody had asked about. Will we bring bicycles? Will we bring segways? Those items, and he addressed it from the government perspective. Currently, Royal Caribbean has no bicycles, no segways. We do not operate in that space. That has nothing to do with our business. Previously in the industry, we have tried that before. It doesn't really work in our business model, so we don't have anything to do with that. Secondly, there was a question related to 2:30 departure time about shore excursions and how much we can bring people along. One of our captains, an old European fellow, asked me the other day, he said, TJ, what time do you get to an airport before your flight? My mother-in-law gets there 4 or 5 hours before it's supposed to leave. I usually get there about 2 hours before for an international flight, 1 hour for a domestic flight. But I'm planning in advance because I have security and everything like that. He said, that's about right. You're going to get there 2 hours beforehand. And then he said to me, TJ, you been to Europe before? I said, yeah, once or twice. He said, what time did you get at the train station before you left for that train? I said, as close as humanly possible. 2 minutes, I'm running up with my luggage, my bag, just grabbing a sandwich and jumping on that train, because I knew what time it was leaving and the last possible moment. He said, that right there is the tender versus pier difference. Train station, airport. How long do you have to be there in advance? And what are those people going to be doing? They're going to be on the island, continuing to shop, continuing to spend, continuing to take additional tours, which is what we're looking for everybody here. And the third question is not my world, so I'm going to pass them back.
Okay. Why do you keep saying that there is zero cost to the government and the people of the Cayman Islands? For 25 years, the Cayman Islands government will receive at least $2.32 less per passenger. Zero cost, and then there's equal lie.
Thank you for the question. I think Deputy Premier and Premier actually touched on it earlier. So we're talking about a decrease, yes, in the per passenger tax, but the volume of passengers is going to increase. So the absolute number, when you do an equation, you always have P times Q. So you have, there it is on the screen. Sorry, I don't need to say anything else.
If you look on page 18 of the booklet that's being provided to everyone tonight, it actually has an explanation on the side that 1.9 million at 1227 comes out to 23 million per year to government, 2.5 million at 995 comes out to 25 million, 24.8 million for government.
When do we see full environment impact studies that were done? When do we see the full environmental impact studies that were done?
The original environmental statement is publicly available, and as I said earlier, there's a scoping study being undertaken which is in progress right at the moment, and that's looking at any significant changes. So that document's being written up and reported at the moment, and will be available as soon as possible.
Have we
The current or the previous document is available on our website, the verdant.ky and the government, so it's publicly available through the website.
Have we explored all options for alternate ways to introduce this or similar? Have we explored all options for alternative ways to introduce this or similar? Whoever asked that question, if they're here, can they expand on that, or was this in regards to the environmental impact studies? If you're here. Did we try other kinds of docks? I don't want to speak for this person because I'm not sure. Okay, refuse to speculate. Moving on. It keeps being stated that the pier is better because ships currently anchor. As the goal is full capacity for most of the year, won't that result in more net anchoring annually? It keeps being stated that the pier is better because ships currently anchor. As the goal is full capacity for most of the year, won't that result in more net anchoring annually?
So I had this question to the Port Authority, and was explained to me that currently there are 8 days a year that have 6 ships. When we have the piers, every day it has the capability to hold 4 berths, 4 ships. So 8 days a year will have the need for 2 additional spots. The anchoring will be removed. There will be no longer be anchoring. The idea is dynamic positioning. So currently there's 4 anchorage spots and 2+ dynamic positioning systems. So following the construction of the piers, there will no longer be anchoring. There will be 4 berths holding the ships, and when the needs are more, there'll be dynamic positioning out in the harbor.
How high will the piers be above the waterline? Have you considered the waves from northwesters combined with sea level rise, especially once it becomes Cayman problem in 25 years? How high are the piers?
The piers themselves are at 3.2 meters, which is about 9 or 10 feet. I work in metric most of the time in my life. And the second part of that question was regarding sea level rise.
Sea level
and
rise,
waves.
when it'll be upon us, yes, 25 years.
Okay. We are, for sea level rise, actually a subject that's kind of near and dear to my heart. I'm on an American Society of Civil Engineers committee. I'm a chair of a committee that deals with sea level change. And we are developing design guidance for engineers and planners on how to incorporate sea level change into sea level rise, into specifically port projects. So that's exactly what we're doing here. And it's right now the plan is to incorporate is about 0.26 meters, I believe, no, 0.52 meters over 50 years, 50-year design life.
Thanks, Scott. Just something else to add, that the 3.2 meters is the same height as Harbour Drive, and most homes in Cayman are built at the same height. So there's a problem on the port, there's a problem on the roads, and there's a problem in everyone's houses.
We're going to wrap up, but I have a few more questions because we want to have a hard stop at 10. And as I stated, any questions that were given that were not read publicly will be placed on our F&Q section on our website and also on some social media pages. Irrespective of the referendum, will the government proceed to improve the cargo facility? Irrespective of the referendum, will the government proceed to improve the cargo facility?
Well, we'll have to obviously look at it, but it's something that's not being planned for at the stage, and it's not being budgeted for. We don't have hard numbers, but based on sort of indications we have, we're looking at $30–40 million. So it's not something that we can simply just say, well, okay, that didn't happen the way we planned, so now we're going to build or enhance cargo facility. The money will have to come from somewhere to do it. This way that is being proposed, it's going to be paid for by the cruise passengers.
There is a rumor that only Royal Caribbean and Carnival will be the only 2 cruise lines be able to use the pier. Please clear up how the piers will work. There is a rumor that only Royal Caribbean and Carnival will be the only two cruise lines will be able to use the pier. Please clear up how the piers will work.
Thank you for the question. I mentioned earlier there are 4 cruise lines involved. So there's Royal Caribbean Cruises Limited, Carnival Corporation, MSC Cruises, and Disney Cruise Line that have signed up.
And just to further explain this, because it took me some years to understand how a berthing preference works. So as Strawn explained it to us earlier, there's 28 spots divided amongst those 4 lines. The way a berthing preference works is that those companies have basically right of first refusal. So in our case, Royal Caribbean, we have right of first refusal on 11 spots per week. We have to confirm that we are going to use those spots 24 to 18 months in advance. Is pretty standard on a berthing agreement. Following that 18-month window, it goes to market, and anybody else can come in and claim it. It's just saying, hey, look, I'm gonna reserve this hotel room because my family comes this time of year. If I'm not coming for this vacation next year, you can put it on the market and give it to somebody else. So it doesn't go unused. It doesn't mean that we are the only people that can use it. It just means we have right of first refusal on it.
Were any polls done to determine what cruise passengers want? Were any polls done to determine what cruise passengers want?
We have extensive data on our customer preferences, what they are expecting, and how they experience all of the destinations that we go to. We know from the comments that we receive from our customers with regards to tendering that it's overall it's viewed as a negative experience versus when the ship berths alongside. And that we see time and time again in written comments that our guests provide us with regards to the process itself. It is a relatively lengthy process to debark a ship with 4,000 plus guests getting off on the tenders. The tenders are efficient, it's very well organized, it's very well run, but the fact of the matter is it's a slow process, and at times it's not particularly pleasant. So our customers tell us that. It's not a huge issue, but it's not their preference.
How many Oasis-class vessels are slated or commissioned to appear in the Caribbean by 2021? How many Oasis-class vessels are slated or commissioned to operate in the Caribbean by 2021?
It will be 4 Oasis-class ships currently operating in the Caribbean. 3 of them are operating all year round in the Caribbean, and the 4th one is in the Mediterranean in the summer. And we have 2 more Oasis-class ships coming in. I can't remember exactly the years. I'm going to say 22 and 24. And we have Icon-class coming in 22 and 23, which is another significant size vessel. So the 3 Oasis-class ships that we operate today sail, 4 sail out of Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Port Canaveral, and now out of New Jersey in the Cape Liberty. And soon we'll be operating out of Galveston, Texas.
Thank you. With Carnival's appalling track record with illegal dumping of waste, etc., why should we trust what they say now?
We don't have a representative from Carnival with us today, so as the representative from Royal Caribbean, I have to be careful in making any comments whatsoever, but I would say that all of the cruise companies are committed to our environmental standards, and it's on occasion things don't go as planned, and I think that's probably what we're dealing with here. So, but I know the commitment from all of the cruise companies is absolute in making sure that we operate to a high standard.
How long does it take to reach the next destination? How can vessels stay here longer and still reach there on time?
Well, we determine time, speed, distance, and we create itineraries primarily based upon guest preference. The ships are capable of accelerating their speed between ports. So I can't recall what is the next port from Cayman. I think it's the itinerary that takes us to Jamaica, Labadee, and one more port. So I don't know the exact technical answer to that. I can tell you that we do this all of the time, and it really is, it's an equation of time, speed, and distance. And these ships are capable of around 21, 22 knots, which we very often don't operate them at. So don't know the complete answer to that, but we do believe that if we can bring our larger ships alongside here in Cayman, it will open up other destinations as well.
I'll do my best for this last question, and as I said, for any questions that weren't addressed this evening, will definitely be posted on our F&Q section on the website as well as on some social media. There are also 7 other public meetings. The next meeting is slated for this Thursday at the Family Life Center. Why not move the cargo to the North Sound? You keep zero risk to the environment, but how have you real measured the cost of this will be to the Cayman people? So bottom line is, why not move it to the North Sound?
You think we got trouble now?
Sorry, where are the voices of the Caymanian who have knowledge of the island for generations?
So let me try to deal with the first question. As long as I can remember, there have been proposals to dredge the North Sound to put in a harbor. Before I was born, which wasn't quite yesterday now, in the 50s there were proposals that talked about it, and Caymanians opposed it vehemently. For those people who know the North Sound, the average depth is 12 feet. You're talking about massive, massive dredging to do anything in the North Sound. Plus, the North Sound is an absolute treasure and a nursery for almost all of our marine life, as well as a major playground for locals and visitors alike. It is unlike almost anything else anywhere else. I certainly would not be one who would ever support that kind of intervention in the Sound. There's a reason why the old people developed the harbor on the lee side of the island. It is really the only place with deep enough water and which is protected most of the year because it is on the lee. It is in the lee. You talk as I have, to many people who have operated out of the harbor over many, many years. There is massive underwater damage to the coral reef structures there because of now hundreds of years of anchoring vessels out there, not to mention in more recent times the collisions when ships run aground. So, as someone said, I think it was Dr. Vaughan said, anytime human beings, or indeed any living thing, does something, it is going to create some impact. None of us are saying or are blind or deaf to the fact that this is a massive project, that it is going to have environmental impact. Every effort is being made to minimize the negative impact, and where possible, and increasingly it is clear that it is very, very possible to relocate coral and to regenerate areas where coral has already been damaged. It becomes, as things are, a weighing up exercise. do the economic and other benefits outweigh the inevitable damage to the environment? In our judgment, and in the judgment of those who have advised us over these many years, it does. We aren't guessing about what we are trying to do. And for Cayman, it comes down, and it will come down on the 19th of December to a weighing up exercise. Do we want to continue to have a vibrant cruise industry, or are we prepared to say, no, on balance, that's not what we want? And it's open to us to say that. But what is not open to us to do, I believe, is to simply say, we want the status quo to remain. Because all of the indications we have are that it won't. Over time, the number of cruise visitors will inevitably fall as the bigger ships pass us by. And so the question then for us is, what do we do about the jobs and businesses which currently benefit from the 1.8 million cruise visitors who come here? That won't be my responsibility, for I shall be gone. But many of those who have what I call the perspective of privilege, because they don't have to hustle day in, day out to find money to pay to send their children to school and to feed them and to keep a roof over their head, can afford to say, we don't need the cruise industry, or it really doesn't matter what happens to it. I have been, as I said, elected 5 times, 19 years. I know what those people contend with, what they feel, and how they struggle. So does the Minister of Tourism and my government. And that is why we have made the judgment call we've had, and why we believe so passionately that this is critical to Cayman's continued prosperity and fairness and the way our society operates. The day that the average person can't look after themselves, those who hold the perspective of privilege will start to feel threatened. It's happened everywhere else in the world. We need to remember when we take these positions that there are other people, Caymanians, many of them, who rely on this industry for their living. And we need to make sure that the industry is around for years and years to come.
Thank you. We'd like to take this opportunity to thank each and everyone who've taken time out to be present here this evening over, again, first of 8 meetings. 7 more remain. To our viewing and listening audience, and for all those who will be attending the meetings, there's a book that is giving out at the door. This goes more in depth, but you were also furnished with a pamphlet. This is consolidated version to what is in the book, so it's an easy read. We encourage you to visit our website again for any questions that could not be addressed this evening, and looking forward to seeing you participate in our other districts as we sure to help clear, answer questions, and maybe dispel all myths. It's all about getting the facts out. Again, we thank you. There's refreshments to the back, and see you at our next meeting, which is at the Family Life Center this Thursday at 7 p.m.